Hi, and welcome to this episode of John's Model Kit Review. Today we are taking a look at Dragon's classic 148 scale ME 262A 1A. The Dragon part number is 5507. This kit is still readily available on eBay and some other online sources. In this review, I'm going to be giving a little bit of the ME 262 history. I'm also going to be talking about the kit and what comes in the box, and then I will go through my build log and my painting and weathering techniques that I used on this kit, and then I will get my conclusions at the end. ME 262 history. The ME 262 was the first jet fighter to see combat. Its development was started in 1939. The first jet-powered flight was made on July 18, 1942. Delays in the fighter development were caused by Hitler's insistence on the ME 262 being used as a bomber. These setbacks, however, were minor compared to the slow development of reliable jet engines. More than any other factor, poor performing, unreliable engines kept the ME 262 and all other early jet fighters from being a deciding factor in the outcome of World War II. Even with the engine problems, the ME 262 was an incredible performer. Its straight-line speed of 540 miles an hour and devastating firepower with 4 Mark 108 30mm cannons and R4M rockets gave the Allied Bomber Command fits and the Bomber Boys nightmares. In fighter versus fighter aerial combat, the ME 262 was all but unstoppable, able to enter or break off the fight at will. New Allied tactics were adopted to counter the ME 262 threat. The jet bases were specifically targeted and bombed. Allied fighters would also sit over their bases and attack when the ME 262s were landing or taking off. The ME 262s took a long time to build up speed and to bleed it off again, making them extremely vulnerable in the low and slow stages of a mission. Ultimately, it was lack of fuel that grounded the ME 262s in the final stages of the war. The kit. This kit originated in the 1980s. Released by TriMaster, it was one of the first wonder kits, complete with photo etch details, vinyl tires, engraved detail, and comprehensive decals. The price when released was extravagant, making it somewhat of a holy grail of model kits. Dragon picked up the molds after TriMaster went belly up and released the ME 262 as one of their master series of kits in the early 90s. How does it hold up today? The engraved detail is okay, but not as refined or extensive as that of an Eduard kit. There is minimal flash, and the clear pieces are of decent quality. The photo etch details are thick. This thickness is good for antennas and structure, but it is difficult to work with on the small parts. The kit decals are thin, opaque, and in register. The cockpit is really good, being nicely detailed and appointed. I'm not a real fan of the vinyl tires, and I would recommend replacing them with either plastic or resin parts. I acquired this kit as a part of a package deal on eBay. It had been started by the previous owner who had painted the interior RLM 66. Unfortunately, the paint must have been oil-based or enamel, causing the liquid adhesive I used not to stick. More on this later. Construction. Per the usual, construction began with painting and detailing the cockpit. As mentioned earlier, the RLM 66 was already painted throughout. I brush painted the cockpit details and gave the interior a thin black wash. Once the wash had dried, I dry brushed the interior with a slightly lighter shade of gray. I added the photo etch seatbelts for the pilot seat. Because of the paint interacting with the liquid cement, I had difficulty getting the interior bits to hold together. Perseverance prevailed, and I closed up the fuselage. Though fit is not the best, the rest of the airframe built up without drama. Several sessions of adding putty, Mr. Surfacer, and sanding followed. As a final step in preparation for paint, I added the canopy. The canopy comes with a hinge allowing one to pose the canopy open or closed. I found it quite fiddly, and in the end it doesn't look great closed. If I were to build this kit again, I would delete the hinge and build the canopy either open or closed. The clear parts were dipped in Future prior to assembly. I used Tamiya tape to mask the clear parts. Colors and markings. Ulster Lieutenant Heinz Barr was a jet ace with 16 kills to his credit while flying the Me-262. There are well-circulated black and white photos of Barr's Red 13. There are also countless reviews showing it in late war camouflage of RLM 82 and RLM 83 over RLM 84, which is a late war version of RLM 76. While this may be the case, there is evidence that Barr's plane was an early version and would have been painted RLM 74 and RLM 75 over RLM 76. Evidence includes the airframe's serial number, it was an earlier aircraft, and lack of pilot's head armor, which is clearly visible in the photos. I chose to finish my Me-262 in the earlier camo scheme. It's a good-looking bird either way. All paints used in this build were polyscale acrylics. RLM 66 was sprayed on the canopy framing first, followed by RLM 02 on the gear doors and landing gear. The RLM 74, 75, and 76 were added in several painting and masking sessions. At this point, I used pastels to emphasize the panel lines and dirty the airframe up a bit. I added structural detail to the Me-262 using the pastels to highlight the underlying stringers, etc. I tried to keep things subtle, adding just enough to enhance detail. I used a reference book to locate the stringers and bulkheads on the Me-262. I then sealed everything with a coat of Future in preparation for decals. I used the kit decals for this one with one problem. The kit decals carried a very thick adhesive residue. I had to press them down repeatedly to squeeze the adhesive out. Several of the kit decals walked after they were in place and had to be repositioned and re-squeezed. This is probably due to the age of the kit more than anything else. I also noticed some yellowing on the decals, and as this has been on the shelf, the kit decals have yellowed further, so you'll notice that in some of the photos. Once firmly in position, the decals responded well to an application of microsol. I was fortunate to have a good photo of the plane I modeled. The markings are correct and in register. After weathering the decals, I gave the plane a final flat clear coat. The landing gear and other fiddly bits were added at this time. Final detailing was then completed. Conclusions. There are many reviews of the Dragon-Trimaster Me-262 out there. Most agree that it's still a good kit that turns out nicely. There are two areas where this kit falls a bit short of current offerings. When compared to the Tamiya and Hobby Boss Me-262s, the finesse and the amount of engraved detail is a bit lacking on the Dragon kit. Also, the fit of the Dragon kit is not up to the Hobby Boss or Tamiya Me-262s. It's just not as good. Though it looked a little rough in the box, I'm impressed with the end result. The airframe builds up relatively easily, the photo etched structural parts are straightforward to install, and the level of detail they add is really nice. The clear parts are okay. The decals I would recommend replacing, again, mainly due to the age of the ones that I had in this kit. I would also recommend replacing the vinyl wheels with either resin or plastic parts. Due to the multimedia nature of this kit, the higher parts count, and the sometimes fiddly construction, I would recommend the Dragon Me-262 for those modelers with some model building experience. Like most kits, if you can get it for a good enough deal, it's worth a go. I would love to know what you guys think. If you have built this kit before and want to share your experiences with it, please feel free to post in the comment section below. As always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, model on.